What's up, everybody? I'm here today with Chris Thomas. He's the Senior Director of Digital Media, Marketing, and Fan Engagement with the LA Galaxy. And he's here today to talk with us about his journey with sports and with esports. How are you today, Chris?
I'm okay. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. So generally, I just want to start off with learning a little bit about you. I know I was looking at your experience. You've done New York, you've done LA, you've been with the Dodgers, you were with the New York Cosmos for a while. You've kind of hopped around in sports all over. So I'd love just to hear, from you kind of what your journeys looked like and any learnings that happened there just from the beginning.
Yeah. So I grew up a huge soccer fan, which I guess it felt a bit more rare back then. But
Yeah.
yeah, so grew up a huge soccer fan. When graduated high school in Southern California, moved to New York to go to school at NYU. I think at the time, really think or know that sports could be a career one could work in. And I think in
Yeah.
hindsight, I could have taken advantage of the fact I was in New York and was crazy about soccer and a time when not a ton of people were. And
Sure.
but didn't again was focused on other things and didn't even really imagine one could work for in sports. But yeah, was in New York for a while. Then after graduation, moved out to LA, and yeah, started my career and ended up kind of moving near Dodger Stadium, and sort of a light bulb went off in my head, and realized that that's potentially a career path one could have. So worked a season with the Dodgers with the main goal of getting a job in soccer. I thought at the time being able to come to an MLS team
Yeah.
or a soccer organization with experience in baseball.
And what were you
Yeah,
doing at the time with the Dodgers?
it was like a customer service job in the premium
Sure.
department. Again, it was like my first job, so worked a season there, which was a blast. Like,
Really?
I mean, I still live walking distance from Dodger Stadium. I love the sense of community around the team. I love how much the team interacts with, or just like the fandom of the team and the culture of the team interacts with the neighborhood. I would just spend most of my time like shooting the breeze with, some of the people that have been working there since the 60s or 70s. And
That's awesome.
just the whole culture of it was so enjoyable. And without dating me too much, that was the season in which they signed Manny Ramirez.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know a ton about baseball. Again,
That,
I really only ever followed soccer, but
sure.
I know
Sure.
a lot about one specific baseball season. So
There
it would have
you
been like
go.
2008 when they signed Manny Ramirez. So it was like a really fun team and a fun year to be around. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I feel very fortunate that I was able to have that experience as sort of my first
Sure.
job in sports.
Yeah, that's a great first job. And then they just won the World Series.
They did, yeah, which is yeah, been interesting because all the celebrations were up and down sort of the neighborhood I live in, and it's awesome to see. I mean, without getting too far out of myself, I think one of the reasons I love working in sports is just being able to celebrate and
Yeah.
celebrate with fans and celebrate with teammates and being rewarded for, um, a journey or being rewarded for hard work. And I definitely felt that way in Los Angeles when the Dodgers won. Just this
Sure.
outpouring of emotion and the sort of coming together to celebrate like a well-earned triumph. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then so after the Dodgers, where did you go next?
Um, so yeah, I was able to leverage sort of my experience with the Dodgers to get a job at the LA Galaxy. So I was there sort of right around when Bruce Arena joined, so at the end of 2008. And I was there for like 2 seasons, sort of doing like fan engagement supporter stuff, basically. This is sort of in the early days of supporter culture. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to see. I know certain clubs have been doing it for a long time, and there's a good supporter culture in MLS before, but it felt like sort of still the early days in regards to that, especially compared to where we are now.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's one main supporter group starting up at the LA Galaxy that's still there now, Angel City Brigade. So it was really working closely with those groups to sort of really establish their footing within our club culture. So it was really, really fun. As someone who is uh, pretty diehard about the sport, being able to work very closely with sort of the club's most passionate fans was awesome. Traveling to games with them, like on the road and stuff, it was really cool, and I was pretty proud of the work we were able to do.
That sounds
When it,
amazing.
yeah, it was fun. Especially at the time, it was like really about getting them everything off the ground and really giving them a solid footing. I mean, it seems crazy to say now, just because supporter culture is so ingrained in the
Yeah,
sport here in North America, but at
huge.
the time it really wasn't. It was, Seattle just coming to the league, Toronto just coming to the league, and they were really, with what compared to like with what DC was doing, or even what Columbus did in 2008, like those are sort of the early, I don't know, the kind of beginnings of where we're at now, and it was cool to be sort of at the beginning of that. So yeah, it was a fun experience, and it was a good fit for me at the time.
Sure.
But yeah, in terms of my career, I did end up feeling like I'd sort of wanted to, I guess, accelerate my own career growth. So I ended up
Yeah.
quitting the LA Galaxy, uh, and then going back, which gave me an opportunity to like go to the would have been the 2010 World Cup, and kind of travel around a little bit, and then went back to NYU um, for grad school for sports business, knowing sort of a bit more about what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of funny how it worked out, but ended up going back to New York for a few years.
There you go.
Um, yeah, and then while starting grad school, ended up falling in with the New York Cosmos,
Yeah.
which yeah, I don't know how much people know of that journey, but certainly what was going on with the club around 2010 was when I joined them was really, really exciting. As someone who is a huge history nerd and went to school for history and loved the history of the Cosmos and the NASL, it was a cool opportunity to try to be a part of bringing that organization back to life. So um, it was a very weird and strange time, and it was very much like a soccer startup. And
Yeah.
where what we were doing now feels a little bit pretty different to where it's at, or what we were doing then feels different to where it's at right now. But in 2010, we were, I think, doing stuff that, in terms of thinking about branding the club and the importance of things like a hat in terms of branding, and the importance of integrating sort of more streetwear culture into a club's marketing
Yeah.
and brand positioning. I think it was way ahead of its time.
I was about to say that's what it sounds like. It sounds like y'all are on it like years ahead.
Yeah, we got a ton of that stuff, I think, really, really right.
Yeah.
At the time, we just didn't get the on-field stuff right, and it was a weird thing with trying to join MLS, and then ended up at NASL, and there's like a bunch of stuff that happened. But certainly, it taught me a lesson about how you really have to marry the sort of on-field stuff and with the off-field stuff, which
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't quite have right at the time. But it was a really, really fun and good experience living and working in New York, and
Sure.
just trying to do something totally new and different. And that sort of startup culture and environment was really fun, and I learned a ton, and did a ton of different stuff. Like, had a ton of different experiences I don't think I could have gotten anywhere else. So it was really, really cool. And the people that were working at that original, when I first joined, were like, the head of marketing at the Cosmos at the time was Dan Cherry, who has had an awesome career since then. He's now head of DC Comics.
Wow.
There's like Teresa Tran, who was working on the PR side, who has done works with Players Tribune, has done incredible stuff. She worked with Pele for years. So it was a really, really cool crew that I was working with, and I had a lot of really cool experiences. But
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah. Um,
And so following that, you came back to LA to
yeah.
where you are now with the Galaxy. What brought you back to California?
Um, so yeah, the Cosmos thing I felt was sort of there's like two periods of it. There's like the startup period where we were, I thought, a very successful soccer brand, but not a very successful team. And then this
Yeah.
second period of it where it was right when we joined the NASL. We had Gio Savarese as our coach. Actually, a pretty fun, cool team. But I think was very competitive and could have competed with a lot of teams around the country at the time. But
Hmm.
and then yeah, we played one season. There was that first season at NASL, and I just didn't know if I wanted to continue down that path as much with them. So
Sure.
um, and my last day at the Cosmos was the day they won. Would have been the NASL Soccer Bowl, so it felt like a really good note to end on.
There you go.
Um, yeah, and at the time there had been a change in the marketing and digital departments around the Galaxy, and they brought in Brendan Hannon from Chicago Fire to sort of head up PR and digital and kind of reshape that department. And I was his first hire. So I
Sure.
connected with some people I'd worked with back in the day at the Galaxy, and I connected with Brendan, and we sort of hit it off right away. And Brendan, I still work really, really closely with. He's the VP of here at the club, and we work sort of side by side on most everything. And it's been a really, really, really good relationship going back to 2013. So yeah, we won Soccer Bowl on the Saturday. I flew out to LA on the Sunday, and then started back at the Galaxy on the Monday.
Wow.
So yeah, and I've been at the Galaxy ever since. So
Okay.
that would have been
Fantastic.
right at the end of the 2013 MLS season. So like mid-November.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's a great story. Jumping back and forth with LA and New York. One of the things I did notice is that you were working with social media with the Cosmos,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah,
very intriguing to me because that was 2010 to 2013. So that's kind of like
sure.
as everything's kind of blowing up. Twitter's getting off the ground.
Yeah.
Facebook's a staple now. I don't know if Instagram was quite the monolith it is, but I know that was around that area. Um, what learnings did you have, and kind of what did it feel like to be using this new tool that connected people more than anything had before? Did you like at the time? Did you know? Oh, this is huge, did you learn anything that you've utilized today from the early days of those tools?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was able to recognize sort of its importance and growing importance, and um, yeah, it was cool. It's interesting. I mean, I think started the social accounts on a lot of those platforms for the Cosmos, but back in the early days, it was really all about community building.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really have a term for it back then, or really as much of a cogent sense of it, but it really was all about connecting with people in a super literal sense. And I mean, I would spend hours a day replying to every post, replying to every tweet, every Facebook, comment, and really
Somewhere,
trying to build a community of Galaxy fans.
yeah,
Or sorry, build a get my space team, soccer
Cosmos, sure.
teams mixed up all the time. Build a community of Cosmos fans, which I still feel like I'm doing today, and I still feel like, um, community building is literally all we're talking about the Galaxy in 2020, and that was sort of what we were doing 10 years ago, but just on a purely digital level. And now it's sort of, yeah, I think that ethos still holds true. It's a lot harder to do that now on social, um, especially at the Galaxy, where we have a pretty sizable global following. I think it's not as achievable, but I think we're trying to, I think building a community and connecting people and building a network and providing fans a real, like a personal relationship with their club is still pretty important to what we do. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how it worked out that way.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing with you going back and forth between New York and LA, I got to get your opinion. Which city do you prefer when you take into account everything, and which city has the better food?
um, yeah, it's tough. I have a lot of friends in well, actually, all my friends moved out of New York by this point. They're all like out of upstate or in
Yeah.
Philadelphia or different places. So, um, yeah, it's a tough call. I like LA a lot. It's a really nice quality of life,
Yeah.
and the food is awesome. There's everything, literally anything you want to do is within an hour's drive away from LA. So might means I've gone a little soft at my old age, but I am all on board for LA at this point.
Okay, fantastic. Um, well, yeah. So the next thing I wanted to know is, you were all sports. Did you play video games growing up? And if so, were you aware that it could be competitive? When did you kind of learn about like there are esports? There's this competitive video game community out there.
Yeah, I mean, from my own personal experience, not a, didn't play a ton. I have gotten into like I was really into what's now called Football Manager.
Yeah.
Like in high school, I would spend way too much time on that game when I literally had to order it from the UK and sort of like make sure it's compatible, and it would come 3 months later, and
Yeah.
literally have to get the disc in and install it.
The grind, man. The
I
grind back in the
know,
day.
I know. It's so I spent a lot of time on that, which it's sort of funny story. I don't know if you have time for
Let's do
my
it.
football manager
I
story.
want to hear your football manager
Um,
story.
so uh, I was really into it in high school. Kind of fell off as I started my career.
Yeah.
And I think maybe in 2014, after the end of the season. So in 2014 at the Galaxy, it was a really really long, really really hard season, but ended up with us winning and had a little bit of time off. And I was like, you know what? I just want to relax for a weekend. I'm going to clear my schedule, not do anything. I'm going to order the newest football manager and just like relax for a weekend.
Right.
And so order the game, boot it up. And the very first, like I, select the teams, the Galaxy, and literally the very first thing in my inbox is Brendan Hannon, my actual boss, who I just spent way too much time with, wants to meet with you about your goals for the year. And I was like, I can't do it. I just shut the game immediately. It's like, I can't have another meeting with Brendan. Like, all I want to do is relax and not have meetings with him. And this game is telling me to have meetings with him. So,
That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, that was I think that might have been the last time I've been able to play Football Manager.
A
Um,
little too traumatic.
yeah, yeah. In terms of esports on the competitive side, was introduced so in FIFA, might have been 17. Um, so I guess going back to 2016, we worked really closely with EA Sports because I don't know if you remember FIFA 17, but Giassi Zardes is in or maybe it's FIFA 18, and it came out in 2017. Anyways, but Giassi Zardes is in the Journey, which is like that single player mode that really cinematic single player mode they had. So,
Yeah.
back when Giassi was with us, worked really really closely with EA Sports to integrate with getting Giassi in the game, which was I still think was a really really cool win for us. But also we were the first MLS team to have their soccer specific stadium featured in the game, so worked really closely with them on that. Worked really closely with EA Sports on like the marketing, which ended up being kind of unfortunate because it came out the year we finished in last place,
Oh
and
no.
we had built out this whole plan a year before, like, oh, because in the game you play as fictional character Alex Hunter, who in the game signs for the Galaxy for a year or something. Um,
Yeah.
and our whole marketing plan was going to be, let's pretend like the Galaxy have really signed Alex Hunter. We'll do the
Oh.
full, press release, graphic, like put him on our roster page. We can sell Alex Hunter jerseys. And mind you, when we were ideating this in 2016, like we were really good and like we'd finished, in the playoffs, and
Yeah.
it seemed like a really good idea at the time. And but it was all pretty locked in at the EA Sports. And then the time the game comes around, we're in last place. Legit, actually need a striker, like, and we have to. I'm like, oh no, we have to announce the signing of a video game striker. This is gonna be horrible.
Oh no.
but all the like the plans were all baked in, so we like had to roll with it, and yeah, that was really unfortunate. But anyways, yeah, so worked really really closely with them, and this was right around the time MLS was formulating the concepts around EMLS.
Yeah.
So I worked really closely with like James Ruth and the team at MLS to sort of ideate what a competitive um, esports league would look like. The FIFA launch that year was a party at Dignity Health Sports Park where basically we collaborated with MLS to run a competitive tournament. It was like the top 32 or 64 gamers from California.
Sure.
And I think it might have even been the first competitive video like esports thing MLS had done was this FIFA launch
Mm-hmm.
at our stadium and around this title, which we were really involved in. The whole premise of it was it was like going to act as a scouting tournament. So we were going to kind of scout players, and then whoever we liked the most at this tournament was going to be signed as NYCFC beat us to the punch in terms of signing MLS's first esports player, but this was going to be the Galaxy's sort of first esports player. So did that. That was a lot of fun. It was pretty cool. That was my first real like hardcore introduction to that world.
Yeah.
Was definitely aware of it and definitely had some interactions to it, but that like definitely threw me in the deep end on it. And from there, met Giuseppe Guastella, who's our the Godfather, who is we've been working with for the past few years as our esports player, who is awesome, just like the
Yeah.
best dude, and I think a really good representation of our club and our brand. So,
Sure.
yeah, that was my introduction to the world of it.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. And so I got to ask you, coming from traditional sports, is there anything that you've seen, both, I mean, either in FIFA or in just the broader ecosystem, I mean, like with Fortnite blowing up and all of a sudden, everybody knows someone who plays a video
Sure.
game. Um, is there anything that you've seen that might be kind of a cautionary tale that sports may have learned that is esports needs to pay attention to, or vice versa? Is there anything from esports that you think could be applied a little bit more to sports? So what lessons do you think those might have to teach each other?
I mean, I think the biggest lesson for esports, and I mean, it's kind of seems cheap to say it should be a lesson at this point because I think a lot of the top level esports organizations are definitely doing it, but it being about the live experience. As someone who's not like, I'm not going to pretend I'm, super like intimately ingratiated with the world of esports, and I
Yeah.
certainly don't watch a ton outside of FIFA. But the live experience is really, really cool. And for esports, I think that should be the primary focus I mean, it's tough to say now during COVID, but
Yeah.
that should be moving forward when it comes out of it is the live experience. I think
Yeah.
because I think that's just a way to grow your base, to expand the tent is because I do think the live experience is really, really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. I'm
like
right there with you.
a full crowd cheering on. I mean, honestly, they could be doing like playing Jenga and it could be really fun. But anyways, but like having a super engaged, lively crowd watching like two guys compete, like or two people compete like that is there's something about it that's really, really cool. And I do think the fast-paced nature of esports allows for some really, really cool live moments. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think as much as esports can sort of adopt the trappings of a traditional live sports experience and expand that audience and find venues that are really, really suitable for it, I think the better, because I think that is like it's hard to argue against esports when you're there live and everyone's
Yeah.
cheering on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I completely agree. And like that's sort of something that I talk about often is events. I love events.
yeah,
Growing up, that was the one thing that I would have wanted out of video games
for
was
sure,
we didn't have that. I was just
for
playing
sure,
I was playing my little video games in my living room, and it's like if I could have gone and like just played with people,
absolutely.
or been a part, like watched people do this thing, yeah, that would have been so cool. And so I think you're very right about that. I think moving forward. It's just a matter of getting people there and excited because there's just an
Yeah,
energy that you can't tell that energy. Someone
for
has to be
sure.
in that room and feel it.
For sure. Yeah. And exactly. It's even hard to describe sometimes, like to someone who's maybe not experienced it. But yeah, once you're in the room, I think it's pretty, yeah, it's hard to deny how exciting those can be. So
Yeah,
I think MLS has done a really, really good job on the live experience and have really invested in the live experience of their events. So
yeah,
I think a shout out to that, something that they got right early on is how important the live experience is. So
for sure.
yeah.
I had the pleasure of working at the EMLS World Cup in 2018,
Okay.
um, and I remember, or was it 2018 or no, it was 2019. And I just remember being in there. I don't come directly from FIFA,
Mhm.
but I grew up. I love sports.
Yeah.
Madden was kind of my game as a kid. Um, and so I was able, while working on that, it's those moments where it's always fun to be watching it, but then like little moments will happen where you just can't look away. And I
Sure.
remember there was
Absolutely.
like, I think it was like losers finals or losers semifinals, and I believe it was Dulsta at the time. He was playing for the Philadelphia Union, and he
Hmm.
was he was playing, and it's like he had a game where, I mean, it was just cutthroat, and then it comes down to the final seconds, and you couldn't not watch because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
Dulsta in with the controller in his hands, and
For
there's like,
sure.
it's extra time, and he's down a goal, and
For
then
sure.
somehow he just comes up with a miracle goal and then ends up winning. And
Yeah.
it's moments like that where, I mean, that you remember the most, or the moments where like everyone is somewhere and they just have to stop
Yeah.
and look.
I
um,
do think one thing I'm excited about, which I think we've seen in stops and starts, but haven't fully gotten there yet,
yeah,
is the integration of soccer culture or soccer supporter culture with esports. Like, I mean, we're I think a few years at least from it, but I mean, I'm excited for the day when there's full supporter sections singing chants for, their team's esports player. Like, I think that would be really, really cool and not something I've seen yet, but I could definitely see coming in a few years is, if we're playing games and, home and away, like really focusing on home markets and building that home support. Like, I think
yeah,
that could be really, really exciting. So I do know, I mean, one reason I love working with Giuseppe, our guy, is he really thrives off the pressure, feeds off these live experience, like really is at his best at these live um, events. Just he's really experienced and has just kind of seen and done it all. So I'd love to be able to see a player like him sort of interact with a really home, like partisan crowd that is singing or chanting or doing that, drums and that whole thing. I just think that could be something I haven't quite seen yet, and
yeah,
I'm excited for when it does happen.
yeah. I can't wait for it. I can't wait to go to a tournament and there's like paint on people's chests, and there's just like,
Yeah,
oh, it's gonna
for
it's gonna be
sure.
great, and it's getting there.
Yeah.
But so I'm excited to see that. And so, with regards to like LA Galaxy in particular, I know y'all have been. I mean, you've been with EMLS since it started. You said you were there, kind of on the planning ground. I know y'all have done several tournaments.
Yeah.
Are there any initiatives or news that everyone who's watching should be looking out for? Anything exciting with LA Galaxy that you're really passionate to share moving forward as we go into 2021?
Um, 2021 is gonna be tough because I think it's yeah, it's hard to plan. So I don't want
Yeah.
to. Yeah, nothing I could totally share now.
Okay.
We had some initial thoughts around events and things like that, but for planning purposes, it's just sort of challenging to say what 2021 will look like. So
Yeah.
I think for me, this is not going to be particularly exciting for fans, but we are. But I think it's exciting for the future of the sport. Is we've been, I think, able to better integrate sponsors into our esports programming. So
Yeah.
we'll have additional logo inclusion, and I think the uniforms or the hats that Giuseppe wear while playing is going to be have that additional sponsorship inclusion. And there's been a huge outreach from our partners to be a part of what we're doing on in FIFA. So
I love
I think
it.
that's pretty cool. And our selling point is it's a pretty easy entry point for brands that want to be involved in esports. It's a game that anyone can understand.
Yeah,
It's not violent. There's not shooting. So for certain brands that are kind of dipping their toes in the water in terms of like esports or competitive gaming, FIFA and sort of what we're doing on the EMLS side is a really accessible entry point for them. So
sure.
we've had a bunch of success this year, really getting our partners engaged with it. And I think it's something we'll be looking to really activate on in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the cool things with COVID going on has been the ability for esports to go digital so easily.
Sure.
And so I've been very lucky myself being an event organizer. It's just, I know if I were like organizing other, like if I were a meeting planner or like a wedding planner, like, oh my gosh, this would have been so much harder. But,
Yeah.
I've been able to be like, okay, we're going
Yeah.
online.
Yeah. For sure.
And so definitely lucky in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, I guess kind of wrapping it all up, if there's anyone out there watching this who wants to work in sports or esports, or even if it's not one of those paths, I'd love, if you had any lessons you could share or any tips from your journey that you really think have gotten you to where you are. Because I think there's going to be a lot of people watching. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. He's working with LA Galaxy. I want to do that. What would you say to someone that wants to follow a similar path?
Yeah. The kind of two things I say, and they're pretty connected, is one is, I mean, from my personal experience, whenever I hire or talk to people in that position, it's always I always am personally looking for soccer fans or potentially sports fans for like hires or bringing people into the club, just because, I mean, working for a sports team is such a unique experience. It's working most weekends. It's a
Yeah,
lot of travel. It's a lot of late nights. It's a lot of weird hours. But it's incredibly rewarding
yeah,
because you get to kind of really feel the wins and losses. You get to kind of ride the roller coaster of a season. You get to have that see your work sort of pay off in large crowds or all that stuff. So
it's passion.
um, yeah. It's awesome. I'm not complaining at all, but it
Yeah,
requires, I think, being passionate about the sport or being passionate about the team
I love
specifically
that.
to really succeed, because the demands on it, it's not a 9 to 5. It never can be a 9 to 5.
Yeah,
And I don't think if someone looks at it as 9 to 5, I just think it's just that bit harder to be successful. And just because I really think it requires giving up so much of yourself because you really care about it and you really want to see the team succeed.
yeah,
Um, so for me, that's one of the first things I always look for is someone passionate about soccer or at least sports, or does someone have soccer experience or experience with sports teams? Because it's so
hmm,
unique, it's so different, and it isn't for everyone. So yeah, being able to highlight your passion, I think, is top of my list to anybody who's potentially looking to work in sports. And then the other side of it would be, I think, just getting your foot in the door. I know it's slightly a privileged thing in some cases to be able to do,
sure.
but I do, to that note, end, I will always look much more closely at people that, if you're looking to hire a position, that have specifically sports or soccer experience, especially with the team. And I think with the amount of clubs across the United States, whether it be in USL or MLS, being able to just get involved in some way and get your foot in the door and make those connections, I think, is really, really valuable. So, yeah, I
Sure.
mean, when I worked at the Galaxy the first time, wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to do in the end, but I was able to make some really good connections and showed that I had soccer experience, and I think that's helped me. That helped me kind of get the job I did want, coming back to the club in a few years later. And but I think it's all about just getting your foot in the door. So finding those avenues. I mean, whether I worked customer service for a year in a thing, but
Yeah,
it got my foot in the door in sports. And so finding those little avenues, if you really, really do want it, I think are important, just because it's just different. And you just, applicants that I talk to, or like job applications I review, they really stand out if they come with with that sort of experience. So
Yeah.
those are usually the piece of advice I give.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's great. I mean, that seems to be the best way is just figuring out how can I get involved, what can I do to show them that I love this thing,
for sure,
and I want to be a part of it.
for sure.
Um, okay, well, thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Chris. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah.
I can't wait for everybody to see this.
Thank you very
And
much.
yeah, do you have any parting words, any shout outs you got for anybody?
No, no, just yeah. Thank you for having me on and taking the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right.
Cheers.
Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.